Let's start with the user prefs. Allowed duplicates will allow the same random number to be used 2 or more times in a row. Max range determines the highest number that can be chosen by the randomizer. There are 11 events. The first event, any random, happens anytime a random number is chosen. Random 1 happens anytime number 1 is picked. Random 2 happens anytime the number 2 is picked. Random 3 happens anytime the number 3 is picked, and so forth. It's important to mention that events greater than the max range won't be triggered. For example, if the max range option is set to 5, then events random 6 through random 7 won't ever be triggered. How about a fun demonstration? I set up a racetrack in my scene. It's just some 3D cubes and 3D cylinders that I've scaled and assigned materials to. I also have a push button in the scene that we'll be using to start each race. For this demo, we'll also need a randomizer and a repeater. I'll go ahead and find them in the Utilities folder and drop one of each in my scene. I want the cubes, the 3 racing cubes, to travel around the track, so I'm going to navigate to the Container Mods folder and locate the spinner mod. I'll go ahead and drop one into my scene and make sure it's positioned at World Center. I'll change the RPMs to 3 and uncheck spin on startup, as well as unchecking looping. Then I'll duplicate the spinner mod 2 times so that we have a total of 3. I'll name them racepath_01, racepath_02, and racepath_03. Now that I have them all named properly, I'll expand each one of them so that I can access their containers. Since they are container mods, we need to put the racing cubes inside of them. I'll drag and drop Racer 1 into the RacePath 1 container. I'll drag Racer 2 into the RacePath 2 container. And I'll drag Racer 3 into the RacePath 3 container. We're now ready to connect everything together. Let's begin with the push button. When the button is pushed, or rather triggered, I want to make sure the speeds are all reset back to 3. So I'll expand the triggered on-off event, and I'll drag in RacePath 01. I'll choose set speed from the drop-down list, and then I'll give it a speed of 3 RPMs. Next, I'll drag in RacePath 02. I'll select set speed and type in 3 for the RPMs. And finally, I'll drag RacePath 03 to the event and do the same thing. Next, I want the racing cubes to start going around the track. So I'll drag RacePath 01 back into the event and tell it to spin once. I'll drag in RacePath 02, tell it to spin once. And I'll drag in RacePath 03 and tell it to spin once. So when we click the button, all 3 paths will reset back to a speed of 3, and then they will start spinning again. I also want to get the repeater started, so I'll drag in the repeater and tell it to start repeating. Now I'll select the repeater and make sure auto start is unchecked. I'll change min and max repeat times to 1. That will make it repeat every 1 second. Then I'll expand the repeater repeated event, and I'll drag the randomizer into the event and tell it to randomize. In other words, to pick a number. Next, I'll select the randomizer and make sure Allow Duplicates is checked. I'll set the max range to 6 so that it will pick a number between 1 and 6. I'll expand all the events for random 1 through random 6. Let's start with race path 1. We'll be using 2 random numbers for each path, one number to increase its speed and one number to decrease its speed. So I'll drag path 1 into the random 1 event and tell it to increase speed by 0.1. I'll also drag path 1 into the random 2 event and tell it to decrease speed by 0.1. So if the number 1 is chosen, it will increase the speed of our path 1. If number 2 is chosen, it will decrease the speed of path 1. So let's do the same thing for path 2. I'll drag race path 02 into the random 3 event and tell it to increase speed by 0.1. Then I'll drag race path 2 into the random 4 event and tell it to decrease speed by 0.1. Now we just have path 03 to do. I'll drag path 03 into the random 5 event and tell it to increase the speed by 0.1. And then I'll drag the path into the random 6 event and tell it to decrease the speed by 0.1. So what have we done? We set it up so that when we push the button, it sets all the racing cubes to a speed of 3. Then it makes our racing cube start going around the track, and it starts the repeater. When the repeater is started, it tells the randomizer to pick a number between 1 and 6 every second. Each time it picks a number, one of the racing cubes will either speed up or slow down. And that's it. We're ready to test it out and see who wins.